welcome to the First Issue Club. We're your weekly comic book reading podcast. We're going to cover number one issues. It's what we do. It's an accessible point for you to join us, whether you're an expert or a newbie. You're so nervous. What do I buy? What do I get? Do I look stupid if I buy Superman? Yeah. Do I look stupid if I buy Spider-Man? Yeah, it's comics. You're stupid. So? That's fun. You like them.
Yeah, don't be ashamed.
Yeah. No, be stupid and be proud.
I like when you give the intro and you look into my eyes.
You're right across from me.
I know, but I imagine...
I'm speaking to you. I'm actually looking through you.
Oh, okay.
I'm looking into the cold blackness of space that is your pupils. And the void helps calm me as I work through these intros.
I'm here too, Greg.
Greg is also
Greg's
here. Greg
also.
and Budget King. And I'm Mike D. We've got a ton of first issues. We read a lot of books. Spider-Man is a new arc starting. Not technically a number one, but spiritually a number one.
75. It's a nice round number.
So, we're going to be talking about it as well. Any comic book news before we get into it? Since we have so many books, do we just want to get to those?
Greg was telling us about something that got optioned that we covered a little bit ago, which was at least interesting.
Yeah, just a quick little hit. The graphic novel American Born Chinese by Jean Lin Wang got optioned for a Disney Plus TV show. He's known for writing the graphic novels Boxers and Saints, along with many other comic books in the industry. And I just thought it was really great because I loved the graphic novel when it came out. I think, Mike D, you and I read it. It's just exciting to see more representation in the industry for Asian peoples. I think it's great.
Yeah, and I think Disney Plus is a good look. It's prime time. When it comes into the cord-cutting networks, that's the top of the tier.
Yeah, you're set.
Yeah.
And then pirate the rest. Just steal it. And that's all the news I really had. It's pretty much business as usual as far as the comic book industry is concerned.
Yeah, we got a lot of books, so we should just do it.
And as usual, Budget King read more comics than anyone else.
Had to be the best.
Greg and I did our best to read what we could, but you're going to run us down with your list of the top, how many books?
Okay, I read 7 number ones.
You read 7 number ones, so we're going to run through the ranking starting at 7.
And it's funny because last week's episode was the 5th week lull.
Yeah.
And now we are in a bounty of books.
We're going to cover 7 number ones on this episode. That's insane.
So crazy. Can you believe it? It's like we didn't know and we were just finding out now.
I know. It's like we woke up one day. We're like, oh, we do a podcast about comic books. Maybe we should do some
Wait, I read comics today?
Wait, what?
All right, so you doing top to bottom?
I'm gonna
or
do
bottom
the
to
yeah.
top?
We've done this before. It's a massive hit when we do it, and
And if you don't know how lists work,
so we're gonna be doing the worst to the best. But I'm gonna preface this, and I actually mean this time. There were no bad books this week.
yeah,
There was none of them were not great.
I wasn't
No
mad about anything I
stinkers.
read.
Yeah. So even if you get a lower score on this, you still had a good book.
Right, you should be proud.
Yeah, you should
For
be
all
proud.
the creators that listen to our
Proud
show.
that you even made the fucking list because a couple books that didn't make this that we didn't even read was the Wonder Woman 100th anniversary. That's not going to be on our list.
That's an anthology book that's hard to cover anyway.
Yeah, and then Marvel had a one-off book that was like the Defenders get defiled.
Whoa.
Darkhold defiled. So
So that's part of the Darkhold event.
yeah,
that's
so
going
they're
on.
instead of being defenders, they're defiled. And so but it's like this like cosmic horror book. It's a one-off
Yeah.
that people were kind of like into. We're not covering that. And there was
Here's what Marvel did with that book. They saw DC Death Metal, and they're like,
Yeah.
how can we do something similar?
yeah, I would say
And that's why we have Darkhold.
I would say that's true. The other thing they were not covering is there was a heavy metal book that was a one-off, and there is an AWA one-shot or AWA upshot, a book called Out, set in World War II and has zombies, which actually looks pretty cool, but we just aren't covering it. So maybe great, not going to be on our list of 7 books.
Hey, I know it's some creators' dream come true to have their book talked about on First Issue Club. But
I know, our inbox is filled with requests.
some weeks you just got to say tough shit, man.
Right. Your check didn't clear, so we're not covering your book.
All right.
See ya. All right. My number 7, which I think we're starting out controversial, is on Aftershock by Brian Buccellato, Hayden Sherman. It is Chicken Devil, which maybe has the best cover.
It does have a very great cover. I really enjoyed this book. You guys brought up a pretty good point about how it is a carbon copy of the hit Netflix series Ozark, which when you said it, I was angry because I didn't realize that's what I was reading. But I thought the artwork was really dynamic. It was really kind of explosive, no pun intended, and kind of like really made me feel like I was stressed out and like had a really upbeat pace of like I was being chased down by gangsters.
Yeah. It is written really well, but I mean, there's no other description than this than it is Ozark,
Mm-hmm.
except for instead of whatever he was doing, accounting, it's a restaurant business,
Yeah.
a chicken business.
Right.
And the Chicken Devil part is that he's sent on an errand he's trying to like save himself, and he wears the chicken mascot, so he becomes the Chicken Devil.
Yes.
Which it looks just like this. Do you guys remember the San Diego chicken?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I'm not familiar.
AKA the famous chicken. He had like several different names, but it was this chicken mascot that used to like go to all the ballparks and somehow like
Yeah.
transcended being a mascot for like one team or area and became like just vague sports mascot.
Was always causing trouble, always getting into the mix.
Yeah, fighting the other mascots, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I remember seeing him when I was a kid. This looks so much like that, but with a
He was
devil
like
horns.
the super mascot. I kind of remember this.
He was
guy.
like the mascot of baseball.
Could he
no
du-
specific team.
Could he
just-
dunk? No, he didn't. He wasn't in basket.
No, they didn't really dunk in basketball.
You know what? He had some decent hops.
He had ups. He had mad ups.
He was probably
probably like 9 feet tall.
yeah, he was probably a good 9 feet tall. He probably could get one down, actually.
Just
Okay.
put it right in your beak and float on down.
We're gonna Google it for Budget King so he can see.
Okay, I feel like
You
he
remember
was
this guy?
dunking though. Did he never dunk?
I'm sure he dunked.
I'm
a
sure
time
at
or
one
two.
point in his career he dunked.
He mostly pointed.
He probably
He would be like,
dunks
"Hey."
on haters.
Actually, did you know he represents an actual chicken firm?
A chicken, like a lawyer
Like the Jenna
firm.
This this chicken thing? I don't know if that's true or not.
That's a sandwich.
Yeah,
Nope.
okay.
Yeah, he's seeing pictures of
Close
chicken
pals
sandwiches.
with
Which
Ronald Reagan.
there are famous chicken sandwiches, and then there's the famous chicken mascot. They're not related.
No.
Got it. Okay, it does look exactly like that. If you Google famous chicken, you'll see a guy that looks like the cover.
Wow.
Of this-
I
of this
love
book.
this photo I'm seeing right now.
This
the
might
famous
be my
chicken
new desktop.
and Ronald Reagan.
Is that Bob?
Ho-
Is that Bob?
hoisting hands in the
He's
air in
getting-
victory.
He's getting the Medal of Freedom.
Wait, I think that's Bob Dole. It's Bob Dole, right?
No, that's
Ronald Reagan.
Ronnie Reagan.
Oh shit, man! Hell yeah!
Oh shit, dude.
Shit, man!
Oh my god.
I thought I
dude,
knew my
damn.
Bob Doles.
Oh snap.
I didn't realize how famous that fucker was.
So at the bottom of the list, the foundation of this list, which has to be the strongest book to hold everything up, is The Chicken Devil.
Yeah, I mean, maybe for its lack of originality, not for its great artwork, and the action was good. It's an entertaining read.
Yeah.
I also think that it was probably my most anticipated book,
Sure.
and so that is why it got a little bit of a lesser score. I was excited for a new Aftershock book. Like I said, the cover and title looked insane. I will say this about this book. I kind of feel like they went with this thing that's popular right now, which is to like go maximal on your name and cover and like seem like kind of off the wall crazy. And then it's actually just a pretty straightforward as straightforward as the premise of Ozark is
Yeah.
comic. So okay, my 6th book is another book that you did not read. This book is a scout book, which we didn't even talk about covering, but I got mainly for the cover and the name of it. It is a book called Mullet Cop
Mm-hmm.
by Tom Lintern, his first comic, and it's a giant comic.
This, when I flipped through it, when you showed me it, I said to myself, yes, this is a Budget King comic book. In
Yeah.
premise, in style, in just the whole vibe of it screamed Budget King.
And I would guess 98% of people listening would like Chicken Devil better than whatever Mullet Cop is.
Sure, I could see that, but on originality alone, Mullet Cop is kind of amazing.
Okay.
It looks like
It kind of seems like a poor man's Paul Blart. to
yes,
me.
exactly. There we go. Hey, mixed with who's the angry guy that's like the pitcher, Eastbound and Down?
Kenny Powers.
Yeah, there we go.
Yep.
It looks as if Kenny Powers is the main character, and mullets are like
Don't.
they're not.
No, they're
What?
not making a comeback.
No, I'm saying they're not making comeback. I said like it's kind of like that's like a thing you talked about like 10 years ago. So it's a little dated to like talk about
It's
mullets.
vintage.
Yeah. So I didn't really love the mullet thing, but in general, happens in a mall. I love malls. It's cyberpunk. I love cyberpunk. It's violent. It's weird. It's Adult Swim. It's pink. It's neon. And it's really just funny and odd. And it's also a lot of bang for your buck. It's on Scout, and Scout's trying to, get your money. And here they got my money. My one major criticism of this book is that he did his own lettering, and it gave me a headache because he handed it and like the words are like spaced weird, and it gives you like this zine feel, which is again probably why I like this book, but made it hard to read so much stuff. There's a lot of stuff here going on.
I have a question. Since I didn't read this,
Yes.
the title of the book is Mullet Cop.
He's barely a cop, which is odd.
That's not the part I want to focus on.
Okay.
Is the mullet a big part of the comic book,
Okay, so the premise of what happens
or he just has one?
There's all these Segway cops, and they get in a
This
gunfight.
is Paul Blart.
Yes, it is. They get in a fight in a mall, and this guy gets shot in the head. He was a mall cop, but he had a metal plate in his head. And when they like reveal his face, he's growing a mullet. So they give him like this secret identity to become the new, I guess, security guard of this mall. And he gets a magic microwave.
Okay. I would have appreciated this comic more if it had a different name.
Yeah, agreed. Totally agreed. Mullet Cop is too literal. It's like Axe Cop.
Well, Axe Cop was like is like satire. Mullet Cop, it sounds like it doesn't take itself seriously. Like this comic seems like they're like trying to tell like a fun story. Mullet Cop makes it sound like it's like a joke.
This comic's a joke, but it's also like has a story.
Well, I'm not saying this is like a Brewbreaker like novel or anything, but
no, this comic doesn't take itself seriously, but it's like delivered really well.
okay.
The thing is that the author is so new that I think he didn't know exactly where to situate it in between comedy and actual comic. So it's jarring to read. It was fun read. I honestly only read it because it looked like a cyberpunk comic, and then it was, and I was like, great, it was awesome.
Were the 3 stories connected?
Yes.
They're all Mullet Cop stories.
You get a banger of a comic, like just a beefy hamburger of a Beef Boy comic in this one. So you'll get started off right. I believe the entire comic is already written in like hardback form. It's one of those types of things.
Oh, gotcha.
So it exists somewhere else. There's a Patreon for it. Enough with Mullet Cop. Check it out if it's your thing. It might not be. Who knows? Going back in the list now, I believe that my next book pick here is, and here we're getting into the real good stuff, like the hot stuff. This one's going to be Arkham City, The Order of the World. You did read this.
I did.
What'd you think?
I was a fan, but I'm also reading a lot of Batman titles right now. And I think if I wasn't, I would be like, what the hell is happening? It all branches out of like A-Day stuff where the Joker / Scarecrow or something kills a bunch of people at Arkham and other people escape. And I kind of like that there's a book that follows up on the repercussions of that because it just peppers the world a little more. And the fact that it's kind of told like a horror, it makes it a lot more interesting. Like there's this twisted psychological take on it where the last psychologist that worked at Arkham is trying to track down her patients and outthink them, and she's in cahoots with some of them. It's very complex, and its weakness lies within having to have read so many Batman books to kind of follow it.
Yeah, I think that it is at times so anti-hero that you don't really, it's more of a horror book because the protagonist is not really clear.
Yeah.
Like, because there's these escaped Arkham people, of which the only one that I really recognized was the Mad Hatter. And there is actually some new characters, some first appearances in this as well.
Yeah.
And the nurse is essentially trying to retrieve them and not have them killed. But the book starts off with, like, essentially the Rat King or a rat guy who's hiding underneath a kid's bed who ate their kitty and might eat the kid.
He was trying to gear himself up to eat a person.
Yeah. And
Just
that's
couldn't quite get there.
that's about the tone of this book. It's pretty brutal. It's not on Black Label. It's
I
not
could
that
not believe
brutal.
it wasn't on Black Label.
I know.
Out of anything, it seems like this was just tonally like
This
fucked
earned
up.
Black. They need to do some revamping with Black Label.
Yeah, they really do.
because this earned every ounce of Black Label. This is brutal.
Yeah. I don't know if it's because it falls directly in the continuity of the Batman line right now that they were like, can't technically be Black Label because it's not Elseworldian. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. I
think
know-
you're right,
I
though.
know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. But we love Danny. She did Coffin Bound and has done some Wonder Woman stuff. Her artwork rips.
So this is the actual entire Coffin Bound team.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Dan Waters?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. So yeah. So and then Dan Waters also did another book that we really liked called Homesick Pilots. I don't know if you remember that
Yes.
book.
Yeah.
That book ripped.
So good. So Dan Waters is actually super awesome. Like, so this book in itself is great. It is a little complex. I didn't have that tough. I like, actually the synopsis of this is really, really helpful
Uh-huh.
to read. If you're going to read it, it'll set the tone of like what Joker did and what's happening. And then it dips you into like, kind of just go through it. It's a lot like Seven. Like, I think you're kind of like getting like these fucked up people and trying to understand them as people, but then they're actually just fucked up, and do you really care? So it's more of a horror book. But the artwork, Danny's artwork, is just insane.
It's so good for horror, too.
And we're on a first name basis with Danny because Danny just has one name.
Yeah, she's a one-name person. I love that DC seems like they've really embraced some weirder, independent-seeming creators that, like, I just can't imagine 20 years ago anyone with a style like Danny doing a big two book.
Oh, I totally
And,
understand.
and
yeah.
now there's a lot of, I would say more so DC books that get released that are more interesting visually and have more twisted, weird stories than
Yeah.
I would say Marvel.
Surprise, there'll be another DC book on our list
Ooh.
with another interesting artist. Okay, for the next book, which I believe comes in at number 4 through 7, so midway through,
Mm-hmm.
is the Oni Press book, Dirtbag Rapture. Did you guys read this book?
Yes.
Yes, I did.
Do you think it earns the 4th place?
So far out of the books listed, I think it's the best one out of those.
Okay.
Yeah, it
Great.
was actually a surprise of how much I enjoyed this book.
I felt like I read a trade.
Oh yeah, it was
Mhm.
big boy. Like, or lots of words at least.
Yeah, normal sized comic.
Yeah.
Very dense, but super engaging throughout.
Yeah.
And like just an awesome premise executed really, really well. Like it's this young woman who is essentially like an ark for lost souls, like a ferryman that will take them where they need to go for whatever amount of money they need to pay to be transported. And she has like a mind motel where she keeps them all to keep them organized, which I thought was fucking amazing.
Honestly, this is one of the best character developments I've read this year, and maybe in the last 5 years. The main character is not a traditional female body type that you see,
Right.
which I love.
Yep.
Is a complete asshole, but like endearing in a like really, really developed way.
Right.
Like, because it's hard to write a character that's just not like straight asshole, or in that you like or whatever.
Well, she's an asshole, but you know why she's an asshole.
right, and you get it.
Yeah.
She's addicted to flying because it's one of the only places where she can escape ghosts asking her for help.
Yes, one of the rules of this book is that when you die, your soul is stuck within basically a 3-block radius. So unless you died like midair and she's just
Oh.
going to jet through your space, like there's no way of getting to her.
Such a fun premise.
Yeah.
I love it. And then the fact that you get revealed that like she actually has like a mind hotel where she can kind of host them.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason
Like
why-
a hostel.
Yeah.
A haunted hostel.
Oh, she also has like lots of like this book is thick. There's 2 different like drug spiral scenes that she has where she kind of like she actually dies.
That's like how she gains her powers. She does a bunch of cocaine and then smokes a blunt with DMT in it.
Yes.
And her heart stops and she dies for a minute and is brought back to life, and that is what maybe activates her powers of seeing the dead and being able to transport them.
Right.
And then I think she says she uses drugs as a coping mechanism after she's done a job to like kind of shut everything out.
The only reason why this is number 4 and maybe not number 3 for me is that the hotel concept, like in her head, was so cool and so awesome
Mm-hmm.
that I like wanted, like, that was enough for me. And the fact that she just needs to like get paid and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And 3 pages to the end, they add this whole other like demons versus angels concept into the story that I was like, I'm not sure we needed that.
I agree.
It was very out of left field.
Yeah.
I think it's the premise of the movie Legion or something like that. It's in Preacher as well. I mean, it's just like, we get it. Angels are bad. You can write it like that if you want. It didn't need it. And the
No.
book was so good outside of this.
Yeah, and I think it had the book not been so dense, you kind of, with lighter fare and getting a twist at the end of a first issue, it feels like natural that you would get some sort of like hook and be like, oh, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
But since we'd already spent what felt like 3 comic books with the character and then got the twist,
Yeah.
that's what made it feel like it was too out of left field for me.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I just want to give more props to like the thing we've noted a couple times is that it's interesting how she gets paid, which like the people dying obviously don't have cash on them
Right.
and can't just say like make a withdrawal from my debit account. They have to tell her like personal information so she can then later blackmail people. Or
Right.
like something really crazy.
Yeah. Or like they give her like a treasure map of where they've buried money.
Right.
And she has
yeah.
to go find it, hoping that there's money there.
Yeah, I love that whole angle that she's getting money in fucked
And
up ways.
Sometimes we critique first issues for not being good because we didn't get enough. And we're like, what happened there? What is this?
Yeah.
This is a great example of like, they almost put too much
Yeah.
into the first issue. But it like, I think putting a lot into your first issue is normally a good bet. I feel like Image often does this.
The double-sized image books
Yeah.
are great.
So it's a good move. Good job, Oni Press, for making a great book. Okay. I mean, good for my number 3.
Yes. Chris Sabella wrote that book, the one we just talked about.
Thank you. What do we know Chris Sabella from?
He did Crowded, which is
Crowded.
allegedly supposed to be a movie with Rebel Wilson.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so
So we'll
good.
see how that pans out. But he's written some.
Oh, he also did Demonic. He did a lot of stuff.
Yeah, he's done-
House of Mock.
He's done
yeah.
some bangers.
Okay.
So another one.
Another one. Okay, my number 3 is a DC book. It is called Soul Plumber.
I skipped this one.
It is the second book on their DC horror line.
Mm-hmm. Their first one was
The Conjuring or something?
yeah, it's The Conjuring in comic book form.
Why? Okay, one, there was Hill House.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Hill House is gone.
Mhm.
Okay, which Hill House, for those who don't know, was their horror line, which they like dove deep into and we really loved. And then I was like, okay, what was the first DC horror book? It must have been Nice House on the Lake. No,
No.
that's its own standalone horror DC book.
Uh huh.
That's not on DC Horror, which again, odd. DC really needs to work on their sub branding.
They really, really do. Maybe
There's-
just bring back Vertigo.
Their sub branding is fucking. Yeah, that's exactly why they're fucked. Is they don't have a Vertigo to throw all the shit on.
Mm-hmm.
They're just like, oh, we're DC Horror, or we're just a random James Tunyon book.
James Tunyon's running amok at DC.
Yeah. So then I looked at it and it was like this Conjuring book, which is it tied to the movie?
It is tied to the movie.
Okay, it is tied to the movie. Okay, sorry, so I was wrong. So this is the second book on DC Horror. It's called Soul Plumber. It is, you're probably gonna not hear a lot of buzz on it, but it is wonderful. And it is written by one of the people, if not more than one of the people, of the producers of this podcast called The Last House on the Left. So the premise here is that there's this like very, very religious person who
Mhm.
is so religious, he's like nutty essentially. He gets kicked out of seminary for Catholics and he works at a gas station. But he's trying to save like the homeless punks around him. And he gets caught up in like a scheme of a guy that's essentially saying, I can sell you a device that will exorcise the demons out of people. And as a reader, you see that this guy's a charlatan, that the device doesn't work, but there was like some blueprints that existed a little bit that could have maybe worked, but he doesn't really know how they work, and he's just selling the machine and making a shit ton of money. And this guy is so like enthralled with like his purpose of serving God that he steals the blueprints, builds it, and like actually starts doing exorcisms with this
Okay.
like weird like device that he built from a junkyard.
Does it actually work?
It seemingly works at the end of
Okay.
the book, right? And so there's always just this tinge of like the way that the homeless people were, or they're not homeless, they're drug addicts, were written is like very eerie. There's like this sense of eeriness, but nothing like overtly too like scary.
Uh-huh.
But it's like it's more like Tales from the Crypt. Like it's enough creepy that you're like, ooh. And it just was a really fun way to write a horror book.
Mhm.
And I honestly, for a book I didn't give a shit about, I was glued to every single word, every page.
Wow.
So, and it's a 1 in 6. It's definitely a fun read, and it's a nice spin on a horror. So
Yeah, that's a great review there.
I really liked it. It had some stiff competition, which will go into my number 2 book, which is honestly the main news of this whole podcast is probably my number 2 book, because we could talk about this for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I have The Amazing Spider-Man number 75, which is actually a number one arc, I guess, as my number 2 book
Sure.
overall.
So let's get into it.
Yep, the Beyond series of Spider-Man sees Zeb Wells and an entire team of Marvel writers, kind of a who's who of people at Marvel right now,
Mm-hmm.
writing the book because they're going to be doing several issues a month instead of a bi-weekly or single monthly
3
book.
a month.
There's going to be 3 a month. So more people on deck to write this, and a change in direction for the story. Spoilers for the last arc. Harry Osborn, Peter's best friend, the Hobgoblin, has died.
Mm-hmm. For real this time.
We'll see. And honestly, like, kind of like enough with the Osborns at this point. They've been around for like 800 issues.
Mm-hmm.
I could take or leave
Mhm.
Harry being involved in these stories, but it gives Peter something to feel anguish about. But the arc is called the Beyond series because the Beyond Corporation is this group that's kind of puppeteering Ben Reilly, Spider-Man's clone.
Mm-hmm.
So if you remember Scarlet Spider from the 90s, if you were a kid, and there
Clone
was this
Saga.
Spider-Man in a hoodie, that is Spider-Man's clone, and he's back. This corporation has hired him to be their, I guess, heroing tool, and he goes about and solves problems and
He's essentially kind of an Iron Man version of Spider-Man, because he has like a lot
extra tech
Yeah.
because he's backed by an organization.
Mm-hmm.
He gets paid major money, so he probably has like sponsorship deals, and Beyond has their hands in other things.
Right.
There's
and there's this whole kind of arc about copyright and how the copyright of Spider-Man can technically be bought.
yes,
Right.
And they're like,
Because Peter had Parker Industries, and he copyrighted Spider-Man.
Yeah.
The name Spider-Man. And when he had to sell Parker Industries, he forgot to take that paperwork with him when he sold it off. And so the Beyond Corporation now owns the trademark and copyright for the name Spider-Man,
which is awesome.
which is kind of a fun dynamic and like a weird storyline to play off of just like, can Peter be called Spider-Man anymore, or call himself Spider-Man?
yeah. For how complex the idea sounds of bringing Spider-Man's clone back into this,
Mm-hmm.
it actually read like a back to basics sort of thing.
Oh, that's why it's so high to me.
Just
Yeah.
because Spider-Man's been so convoluted for so long that just referencing a clone character that's one of the most popular characters throughout the run of Spider-Man
Mm-hmm.
just made this an easier, lighter read. It wasn't super dense like a lot of the Nick Spencer books were.
Right.
You felt like take it or leave it with Nick Spencer. You were excited to get a new writer.
Yes, I've been kind of bored with the Nick Spencer stuff for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And he spent 75 issues kind of gearing up for this Kindred villain, and then the reveal of that character just fell really flat on its face for me. You feel bitter about it because I've got over 100 Spider-Man comics he wrote in my boxes over here that like
You could give
I
a
just
shit about.
yeah, I just don't care.
That's a big investment.
And when you walk away from it, the lasting repercussions of it are that Harry Osborn died.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to think of other. I mean, there's other things that happen, but there's such minor character details that it just doesn't leave a lasting impression for me.
Yeah. It seemed like a big production to tie up some loopholes and some loose ends from a storyline that was 20 years old, 20 to 30 years old. And Nick Spencer is an old head Spider-Man fan. And that's what story we got. We got an old head just like really into the weeds
So
webhead story.
speaking of that, Arthur Adams is the
Cover artist.
cover artist of this, which is pretty cool. Like
I love. He always makes a point of drawing the little
Web.
holes for the web shooters
Uh-huh.
on the wrists,
Oh,
and I'm
cool.
like, no one does that but him.
Uh-huh. So fun.
I know he's one of my favorite artists.
Yeah, it's definitely dynamic and like you could tell an Art Adams from across the room.
Totally.
And this cover A was a wraparound and it had
Yes.
Peter and Ben on there. And
Yes.
It was chef kiss. It was so good.
So anyway, I think one of the things, just from a casual Spider-Man viewer, is that when the variants got previewed for this,
Uh-huh.
one of them was that Peter was in bandages. So there's a lot of speculation on like, is this run gonna kill Peter,
Mm-hmm.
or end him or something? And so Peter does get injured in this to the point that he will be
Hospitalized the next issue.
at least the next issue, and maybe for a while, and maybe Ben will actually be the Spider-Man of
Right.
choice for a little bit of the arc here.
Yeah, well, and Peter got hurt because of Ben.
So there's some fun questions here around like, is Ben just the better Spider-Man at this point? But also, you got to think about that he's being kind of puppeted by a corporation, which is
100%.
which is never good.
I don't trust the Beyond Corporation as far as I can throw 'em.
Yeah, we haven't gotten a ton of details in that. I know
Mhm.
one of the things with like there's maybe the most inside confusing aspect of this new arc is bringing this character Janine back in, who was that redhead who looked like Mary Jane,
But it had the
that-
bob haircut.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So they gave her a bob just so I think when you're drawing redhead characters in comics, you can just clearly be like, okay, this one's Janine and that one's Mary Jane.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And Janine is a character that Ben fell in love with in like the, mid 90s Clone Saga.
She's not a clone of Mary Jane, is she?
No,
Okay.
she's her own person, has had her like own demons that she identified with Ben with. She got like kidnapped and had to fake her death
Mm,
because of Clone Saga bullshit,
cool.
and eventually went to jail, got released from jail, blah blah blah. These are the sort of characters and details you're just like, why keep putting them in comics? It's so convoluted at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But because she was a love interest of Ben Reilly in the past, the Beyond Corporation reached out to her and I think hired her to help recruit Ben. And now they've got them both, right? So they
Mhm.
can manipulate Ben in one way and they can manipulate Janine in another way
Mm-hmm.
and thusly manipulate the two of them.
Yeah.
So it's just like, it kind of seems like power moves are adding up for the Beyond Corporation.
And you wonder what's the motivation of the Beyond Corporation? Because right now, all we know is that they have Ben on their payroll.
Right.
Like, are they going to eventually hire other superheroes, or like, what's is their purpose just to protect New York or the world? Like, it's going to be interesting to see what spills out from that.
Yeah, and we got peeks into side stories where Beyond is going and hiring doctors who help
Mhm.
rehabilitate clones and yada yada yada.
Right.
So they're gonna be the bad guy at some point.
Oh, They seem so shadowy corporation.
Yeah. and it's gonna end up being Ben's ability to be manipulated
Mm-hmm.
that makes Peter the better Spider-Man, I think.
Yep.
Otherwise, they're like identical, right?
Right.
Ben's always been a character as a Spider-Man fan that I've felt awful for because he has all of Peter's
Oh God.
memories, but
They're not quote unquote his.
but they're not his. He's just got to step away from it. His whole thing is wanting to help people and
yeah.
give it up to be a hero, and he can't do it. Yada yada. So I'm having fun with him being back in it.
I felt something while reading this, which I can't say I felt anything while reading the Nick Spencer stuff. Like, there was some humor and some depth to Ben and Peter through Zeb Wells' writing
Yeah.
that I think had been lacking for a while. There was like these fun, humorous moments between Peter and Ben that I thought were really genuine. That I am really gonna miss now that Peter is gonna be in the hospital for at least the next few issues.
Yeah.
So I think this is gonna be a lot of fun watching this team take over Spider-Man.
Same. A bold new direction.
Yeah. So this is a great book, and it took a great book to beat it out. Otherwise, this would have been number one, I feel like, for me.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful book. And not being on the Spider-Man line, it was an easy entry. I think that's why I ranked it so high, as I was like,
Yeah.
I can get into this. I like this. It's fun to be at the center of the changing of the tides for Spider-Man.
I think you have to be a comic book fan
Mm-hmm.
to enjoy it. You don't have to be a Spider-Man whiz to enjoy it.
No, you have to know a few base things because they don't really explain who Ben is. Like, if you're just like a new person off the street,
Yeah.
you're just like, oh, who's this Ben guy?
I think it would be fine, though. I think you can be like, oh, they're friendly. I think the fact that he's a clone will get revealed to you if you didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's like, it's more about the corporation controlling him than
Yeah.
it is him being a clone.
Totally.
So the number one book that I have, and I hope you're in agreement with this, is this book called A Righteous Thirst for Vengeance, which is by Rick Remender, who did Deadly Class, Tokyo Ghost, a lot of Marvel books, a lot of people's favorite Marvel books. And this book was insane because I did not expect it. It's on Image, and there's almost no words in it.
It's very sparse.
Which is odd, and the artwork is like stunning. It's impeccable, but the story, it's slow and paced, and then it's like hits you like a ton of bricks, and it just was like, it blew my mind.
Yeah.
I was enthralled, and I was like, this is a series I'm on now. Like, I'm like full on like excited to get this and stay on it.
I think I've said this before on the podcast, but I'm always reminded of the movie Drive.
Oh, yeah.
When you have these like slow paced, monotonous sort of stories where you're just getting like a vibe for someone's day, and then it gets insane like after it's lulled you into complacency, kind of
Mhm.
like you're like, oh my god, it makes that moment feel like that much more real and crazy.
Especially because you kind of get this element like he's a ticking time bomb.
This
the
guy,
main character, and he's
Uh-huh.
also a very, very good person, although conflicted.
yeah,
In the like intro, it calls it The Professional Meets Road to Perdition, which are both characters like you're describing from Drive, the driver. Like, so yeah, I think it's a really good, apt comparison here.
I don't really know, and maybe you can tell more from reading the synopsis of this book, but there's very little to know, like how this guy knows different things. I mean, they kind of shoot to his memories when he shows up at this house at the end, and there's like a heinous crime scene. There's this really slick guy being like, and you just see a picture of it, and then he's like, fuck, I need to clean up the crime scene, make it look like I was never here, and bounce. So you know that he's like in on something,
Well,
right?
no, well, I mean, so okay,
Because otherwise you would just call the cops
well, so that's a
and
good
just
point.
be like, holy shit, my friends were murdered. You know what I mean? So I'm like, why was he there? How does he know these people? Does he know these people?
Well, so the
was
only
he
thing-
sent to kill them?
It's so sparse. So this is what we know because I had to read it twice. He bumps into somebody at a grocery store, and it freezes all of these elements that fall out of that bag. When he gets to this house, he realizes those are all the murder instruments that got used on
Oh,
those people. So
That's the guy he flashes back to.
Flashes back to realizing it was the killer that he ran into at the grocery store.
Yes.
So that's his flashback.
And he's like, I touched all those groceries.
Yes, and
That's what that scene was.
yeah, exactly.
Fuck. Okay.
And which is
Did
amazing.
not catch that
yeah.
at all.
And the murder instruments here it's very graphic, but it's like
broken light bulbs
stuck
into
in and it's like sticking out of them. It's like torturous. So
Mm-hmm.
somebody's getting like some fetish weird killing thing off of them. Drano duct tape to their mouth type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So he realizes he saw the killer. The thing that is odd that we don't know is why was he at this house? And we only know two things. He was looking at his phone.
And there was a sex trafficking article.
He was reading a sex trafficking article, and then he's looking at a Google Maps that was like taking him to. So he had to like map out how to get to this remote place. So we'll figure that out, I guess, in some ways. But like those are the only things that we know right now. Otherwise, we just went through this guy's day of going from bus to bus to bus.
And the character development and the things that happen to him, even though sparse, are like they enrich him as a character so much. The dead bird thing.
He has to go and kill a bird, like a mercy kill a bird for a kid. He like lets a bunch of old people onto a bus instead of him and gets wet. And like it just constantly shows like he's actually a pretty good guy.
Yeah.
So we know we're rooting for him and his intentions are good, but he also knows something. Or I don't even know why he ended up at this house. And we don't know why that is.
No.
But it was a great book. So
it was.
Ed Brubaker is not a fair comparison here, although I've seen that being thrown around, because this is more than like noir crime. This is, I mean, pretty original actually. It's an interesting thing to be like not give you much in a first comic and like hook you and make you care and like understand what's going on. It's truly artistic. I mean, this was a great comic.
And I think he's maybe starting an imprint. I'd never heard of whatever that little orange logo is there on the cover.
Giant Generator?
Giant Generator. I'd never heard that before.
Image lets you do this fucking thing, which blows my mind, is like they'll always throw these other names on things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, fine, I guess. Like, yeah. Like, I don't understand. I mean, I guess with Deadly Class being so successful, they can kind of like let Rick do a Skybound thing if that's what they're going to let this happen do. I didn't see any like. I also like don't get just throwing a sub brand on a comic and not giving you any story as to why that's there.
Mm-hmm.
We might be the only 3 people in the world that give a shit.
Yeah.
About that. So, anyway, great book and somewhat of like I guess probably for the opposite reason of Chicken Devil is I had almost no expectations of this. I just was like, cool, Rick Remender Image book. Let me check it out.
Yeah.
And then it like way exceeded them.
And this was the last book I read out of the group, and I think it being the least dense, it also made it seem extremely fresh. And the vibe of it was just so stark and different than the rest of the comics, which were more like fun, zany, superhero-y, or off the wall and intense. And this one was like very subdued and cinematic. So great standout book this week. Definitely my pick of the week.
Whoa.
Pick of the week. I'm glad we agreed. Last time we did this, I was way off on you guys.
Yeah. The only thing was, I liked Chicken Devil, but I don't know what I necessarily would have put it above.
Right.
From your list. I think I'd basically have the same list, except for I didn't read a couple of the books that you read.
Yeah. I would be interested to see where you place Soul Plumber if you actually read it.
Right.
That's my main.
I almost bought it, but
Probably above Mullet Cop. If I had to guess.
Hey, I read it, so I stuck it in the list.
Yeah, good for you.
I did also like partially read the Scott Snyder There Be Demons book, which
And that's exclusively on Comixology, yeah?
correct.
It's not free, though.
It is free if you
Or unlimited.
unlimited, yeah, but it's not free. You're right. It's thick. There's a lot, and it's also Scott Snyder-y title. Like the way that he does horror is he tries to like tell you it's horror over and over again, and sometimes I can like take or leave Scott Snyder, to be honest.
There are certainly books of his that I've loved, and other ones have been like, nope, no way, no thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was not.
I really like Noctera.
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like talk about how that book's going to get adapted and stuff like that. But anyway, so that's probably another book another number one worth talking about. Man, what an October Wednesday.
What a journey.
What a journey. What a comic book journey. The only journey worth going on.
I think we're going to get a theme these next 4 episodes. It's going to be some spooky books because we're in the spookiest month of the year. So bring your blankets to hide under, folks, because it's going to be a spooky First Issue Club episode.
Can you hear our eyebrows raising?
And our teeth chattering.
Do you guys have your costumes picked out for Halloween?
Yes, I'm going as a tired dad.
Oh, nice. I'm going as the chef from The Little Mermaid.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Is your daughter going as Little Mermaid?
One of my daughters is going as
Sebastian?
Sebastian.
Hell yeah.
So I'll be holding her.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Is she gonna do that voice?
Yeah, my 6-month-old is gonna do a Jamaican accent. R.I.P. By the way, he died.
Did he really?
Uh-huh.
The crab did? Holy shit.
Both the crab and the actor of the crab.
Who was the actor?
I think his biggest accolade would probably be being Sebastian.
Huh.
So
Yeah, he may have done some Shakespeare or something, but Little Mermaid will forever be.
yeah, it's probably his biggest payday. You got a costume lined up for yourself?
No.
An Amazon box is always a good one.
Maybe I'll be a sexy Peter Griffin.
Again?
Yeah.
Hey, you know,
Always a safe bet.
sexy.
Hey, you have the costume.
Funny story.
Oh, la, la.
One of my coworkers, her and her friends are going as a sexy version of the demons from Hellraiser.
No.
Shut up.
Cinnabites, she told me, was the name of what they're called.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she listened, or you were talking about Hellraiser.
I had mentioned Hellraiser and she lost her mind, and then she immediately texted me and showed me her costume, which like looked fucking awesome. So yeah.
So there are people who like love the Hellraiser series.
So I think
For
that
them to make 9 movies, definitely. Yeah.
yeah.
That's true. Or maybe they're just so cheap to make because they have the costumes
you know
already.
What? You don't make 9 movies if you don't have at least a tiny bit of a fan base
Well,
somewhere.
Talk to the Fast and the Furious crew.
People fucking love that movie,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
That's a
Hell
bad,
yeah. It
bad
makes
example.
like billions of dollars.
Yeah. So
That's it.
Yeah.
Land Before Time's a better example. There's like 11 Land Before Times.
Mhm.
Nobody's a Land.
I was trying to think of other movie franchises that have like way too many sequels.
Definitely like Air Bud,
Yeah, Air Bud for sure.
Anna Green Gables.
I've never
I don't know if that's true.
Emanuela.
Look up, movie with most sequels. So that's what you Googled.
Oh, the Halloween series, sure. Nightmare on Elm
Oh,
Street.
yeah, Planet of the Apes. Nobody's a Planet of the Apes fan.
I
I mean,
I
it's
am.
not bad. You're
Coming in at number 7, Nightmare on Elm Street has 9 films.
Okay.
okay.
Halloween, 11 films.
That makes sense.
They're all
Wow.
horror movies. Nope. Star Trek in at number 5 with 13 films. That makes sense. I
That does.
I forgot about Star Trek.
Yeah.
Batman, 14 films.
There's 14 Batman films?
That's wild.
Oh, I guess
the
I
thing
don't.
is-
I don't really think about them as like one.
No, because it's not a continual story or continual franchise. They like reboot it.
Yeah.
all
right?
the time.
Also, are they counting animated?
We'll
I don't
find
know.
out, I guess. They're counting Marvel Cinematic Universe as sequential movies and sequels.
Oh, get the fuck out of here. This list is dumb. Then
James Bond, 26.
Oh, that makes
duh.
a lot of sense.
That's only number
Yeah.
2, though. We've got a number 1, which
Star
is
Wars.
Godzilla.
Godzilla.
35.
Holy shit. Okay.
Again, not necessarily
Wow.
sequels.
That's true
These
because
aren't
it's
like
just
spiritual
like
sequels.
Oh,
I
although
would call
although
James Bond a sequel, though.
although Godzilla is more linear than Batman. Like they only reboot a couple times. Like
That's not true. They only reboot Godzilla a couple times.
no. Of that like 35, a lot of those are just 60s, 70s, 80s movies of like not having a television show. So they're like, Godzilla fights Mothra now. Godzilla fights Mecha Godzilla. Godzilla fights like that's what those movies are. And then when they get into our time, the 2000s, they start rebooting.
yeah, because you have the one that what's his
yeah,
butt?
he fights Rodan, and then
And then he fights Charles Barkley, and then he fights what was the one from 1999? That was Matthew Broderick. So that was like the big reboot that happened, and then
there was the Puff Daddy Led Zeppelin
Yeah.
ripoff song, right?
Yep.
Come with me,
Dun-dun-dun,
yeah.
dun-dun-dun,
Which okay,
dun-dun-dun.
okay. Can you guys name? I looked this up today. I don't know why. Name as many bands as you can from that soundtrack, because I'm about to blow your mind.
Is there a lot? Let me guess. Was Aerosmith on there?
No.
Oh wow, 1999 was a big year for Aerosmith.
I'm gonna guess it's all Puff Daddy.
Okay.
Korn?
Nope. This is good guesses. Okay,
Limp
so,
Bizkit?
so that's Puff Daddy and Jimmy Page is that song. Silverchair's on the soundtrack.
Okay, makes sense.
Foo Fighters,
Yep.
Green Day,
Mm-hmm.
The Wallflowers,
So not cohesive at all.
Rage Against the Machine, and Jamiroquai.
It's like
Ooh.
everyone who is famous, none of these
Yeah.
songs were in the movie.
They just plucked people from TRL.
Oh,
and just
and get this too. The Green Day song is the Godzilla edit,
Mhm.
which if you remember this, it has like a Godzilla roar after the like.
Oh, yeah.
Like where's my mind?
it's
or something
after
like-
Wake Me Up. when December ends or whatever.
Something, I don't know.
I'm fucking with you.
I don't know what that
That's a bad
line.
one.
Do wanna be an American kaiju?
There we
Bye.
go.
First Issue Club is brought to you by Boulevard Brewing Company via Space Camper Cosmic IPA. Our music is courtesy of the fine folks at Primary Color Music. You can find, friend, and follow us on social media at First Issue Club or firstissueclub.com. You can support First Issue Club by joining us on our Patreon for additional content at patreon.com/firstissueclub.